The warehouse is open. Tales from the Warehouse talking this time modern hockey jersey authentication. This is going to be a good one. It's the holiday season, and we are giving you the gift of knowledge. Pleased to be joined by NHL Program Director of MeiGray, Geoff Spaid, Authentication Associate Filipe Costa. Filipe, welcome back, sir. How are you doing?
Doing great. How are you, Scott?
I'm very, very well. Thank you for joining. Geoff, saw you fairly recently in person and on Facebook messages. So we like to hang out off the air, and that's always a good thing.
It's always a good thing, Scott. I know we keep in touch, and I forgot to tell you, I recently got a new shirt. It's got rows of corn all over it. It looks great, and I've never been more comfortable in a crop top.
Every single time, Filipe. Every single time. He's got a streak going. It's almost Cal Ripken's, and it's got dad jokes. I mean, I thought you were going to tell me that, you pulled it over each side of your head and it was costly. And I say, what do you mean? And you say something like Buccaneer. And
oh, I just got to say shucks that I missed that one.
We're going to see a Broadway show very, very soon. Boys, we're talking modern hockey jersey authentication. And again, sharing the gift of knowledge this holiday season. Perhaps you have partaken in MeiGray's holiday sale, and you want to know how it works with, we've talked vintage through the years, but I'm glad that we're finally focusing on the modern hockey jersey authentication topic, and this is going to get good in a hurry. Filipe, we'll start with you, sir. What is the MeiGray authentication program?
So essentially anything that doesn't fall at the feet of Geoff, for example, at the NHL program, or with Rob and Mike on the NBA program side, comes to the authentication program side, where we do just about anything realistically. You can send in a hockey jersey, basketball jersey. We've gotten, gloves, anything. But focusing just on the hockey side of things, we get in a jersey. We try to confirm any information that we can in terms of sets and all of that. If we can have any sort of databases that we have access to. And then, start going from there to try to photo match and figure out, what exactly we're dealing with and what exactly the customer has on their hands.
So for me to follow that up with sort of how does it work? Does it start with step A? What would step A be?
Step A would be identifying it. Sometimes as simple as, all right, it's a Red Wings jersey. It's got Larkin on the back. Figure out the season, figure out, the set, the style, all of that. I mean, really nailing down the meat and potatoes of what the jersey is. And then that's once you get that in your head and once you figure that out, that's when you start saying, all right, when was it worn? Let's go out. Let's go to work.
Is there a limitation or any limit on what I can send in to the authentication program?
That all really comes down to the big one is it game worn? Generally, when it comes to anything issued, unless MeiGray has previous provenance from our programs, it tends to be not necessarily a no-no, but something that we usually don't deal with because it's hard to nail that down and be 100% sure that we recognize the provenance on that. Or even something like pucks. We've gotten calls and emails before about people saying like, "Hey, I got a puck in the middle of the game. It was hit out of play during a shot or something. Can you authenticate that?" Realistically, we can't photo match it or authenticate it in any way because it's just the ability is not there for it. But that's really all it comes down to. If there's photos and there's an ability to create provenance in a chain of custody, we can at the very least take a crack at it.
Geoff, once that's established, is there a difference between the authentication processes for the processes, something like that? I'll be all right. For both the MeiGray NHL game-worn jersey program and MeiGray authentication, can you sort of put both of them on the deli scale and tell me which one is the prosciutto and which one is the gabagool? It's always food, man.
Oh, it's always food.
I'd say Geoff definitely knows more about the NHL program, but at least for us, we have that chain of custody and that provenance. We have the information about all those programs, whether it's, Devils or Flyers jersey from last season, or if it's, an 02-03 Anaheim Mighty Ducks jersey. We have the provenance and information. Then from there we go, okay, have we photo matched this in the past? Can we photo match it now? Or are we just, giving it the green stamp of approval and say we're set, the original provenance is good, everything stands firm on what it was once. But when it comes to just the MeiGray authenticated program, you got to go through the whole process. because at no point was that jersey in our hands unless it's been submitted previously. So that Larkin's never been in the house before. We got to do everything from the ground up. We got to check all the games we can and make sure that everything checks out. And, it's hopefully photo match it too, because that's in the end, the firmest authentication you can get is photographic evidence of that jersey being used.
Geoff, as Filipe touched on, a lot of the legwork is already done if a sweater's in the MeiGray NHL game-worn jersey program. Take me through what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the legwork's done. If you came in, it would really look like the tortoise and the hare. And that's nothing against our authentication process and our authentication team, but they got to do a lot more research than the NHL program. Not that I don't do my research, don't do my homework. Rather, a lot of that groundwork's already laid. So it's easy for me to get a whole set of Nashville Predators jerseys in and home and road. And within a week, we're already done. And it could be, I've done that before, where 2 sets, groundwork's laid, we know the set dates. Sure, there might be a guy who got called up in December and then again in April when people were hurt. But, for the most part, with our NHL program, we have rights with Getty and other image databases that it's easy to access these photos. All of our NHL program teams have really good photos. They're really easy. And I know one of the collecting headaches out there is that, I can't see, is this like a little burn here in this low quality Getty like preview image? Well, a little bit behind the scenes is we have a deal with Getty and other image sites where we get to download the full resolution image. So I have an easier time looking at that and saying, yeah, that actually is the bird. Or no, you know what? That actually isn't the shirt, because you can see like the dimple lines and the Adidas are off, or, you can see that this number's stitched in a different spot. I mean, there's a whole slew of ways, but for the NHL program, once stuff comes in, I usually have a running list all year of tag numbers, and it's just making sure that what comes in is what it is and send it on out to the customers and make it available on MeiGray.com. But our authentication team has a lot more on their plates and a lot more to do. So
yes, pardon my false start. It's Sales from the Warehouse, talking modern hockey jersey authentication with authentication associate Filipe Costa and NHL program director Geoff Spaid. Geoff, keep it with you for a second. Does the process ever change to authenticate a game-worn jersey? What is your process? And we'll get more into detail with what are you looking for, because both of you see a different game than I do. I get a sweater from you guys, and I know it's rock solid, and it's all good, and it's got the letter from the team and or signed by Barry, and it may or may not have already been photo matched. I know that Geoff does his due diligence. I do a lot of, a lot of us do a lot of collecting through MeiGray and through the partner teams, which choose your poison, whether it's Jersey. I always want to make sure I get these right. Washington, Philadelphia, Columbus, and Nashville. We go. Yes. So, as we jump through those, tell me a little bit about your authentication process, Mr. Spaid.
Sorry, did you say New Jersey in there too?
Yes.
I don't think you did.
I apologize. I may have said Nashville twice, boys. Jersey, Nashville, Columbus, Philadelphia, and oh my goodness,
Washington.
I'm now, Washington.
Of course. It's okay, Scott. It trips me up all the time. I do the same exact thing. I go, our teams are Columbus, and then I'm going through the alphabet, and I'm like, Nashville, and I'll keep going. So, no, I totally get it. It's tough stuff to remember, but the game worn process really depends. For the NHL program side of things, usually when I get a set of jerseys in, they come in bulk. So teams, I work with the team equipment managers to schedule out set dates in advance, and I try to end let's use Washington. I'll try and end red and white sets at the same time or around the same date range. That way, when we get the jerseys done, Brock Miles of the Washington Capitals can easily package red and white set 1 or red and white set 2 together and ship it over to MeiGray. Makes his life easier, makes the equipment managers' lives easier, but that's always what I'm here to do. Try and make their lives easy and help the collectors as well. So when those sets come in, my job's easy because I already know, let's just say red set 1 ends on December 31st. Well, I'll start on December 31st and I'll pull Tom Wilson off the rack and I'll go, yep, this match is December 31st. And then I'll hop back and I will continue tracking. And there are student collectors out there who go, oh, well, there was an Upper Deck game on this date. It's like, yeah, I know some of those. I get those in advance. I know teams usually inform us on who's going to be the Upper Deck players for the year, and equipment managers will let us know, like, hey, tonight this is Upper Deck. These guys are wearing 1, 2, or 3 jerseys. We're going to get it done. And so I already know on my end, like, obviously I don't need to, well, I'll double check this game to make sure he didn't switch into it for any reason. But for the most part, I know that this game shouldn't match. And so my job, that's why I say, like, I'm the hair in the situation, because I already know the end. I know the start. And yeah, like I said, there are guys that fall outside the realm, but those I can figure out. There's only a few of those for the whole set, and that's okay. But to start, usually I look for wear and wash. Those are the 2 big things. If a jersey has repairs, it's pretty easy to go, yeah, that was probably worn. And then I make sure it was worn.
Right.
If it was a guy who, I know recently for Washington, I'll stick with them, like Alexander Alexiev. He doesn't get a lot of time in the league the past few years. Or a guy like Dylan McElrath, who got called up a lot. The first thing I would do is I would look at the jersey, and let's say it has nowhere, like no burns, no nothing. Well, I would go inside the jersey to not only the fight strap to see if it's been changed at all, because they all come factory. And if it's been moved around a little bit, that's a good sign. If it's been moved around, I'll open it up. I'll look and see if there's any lint, any gunk in there. And then also on the old Adidas, and also I believe moving into Fanatics, there's like a hem tag, like a little wash tag inside the jersey that will get the born on date sticker slapped in there. And so I'll go to that. And sometimes that'll be washed. And if a guy's worn the jersey a lot, it'll just be gone. And there might be like a square residue, like just faded there.
Yeah, like if you take a postage stamp off an envelope, you're like,
yeah,
give me a stamp here. Yes.
And sometimes it's very crisp. If it's like crisp, brand new, I could pull it off and stick it on a envelope and it'd look perfect. Oh, that leads me more towards the game issued side. If it's even slightly damp, like a guy got a little bit of sweat on it, like you can feel the sweat a little bit, then I lean more towards maybe it was warm-up worn. Maybe it was this worn. And then that's when I really dive into my
period outdoor game where he played 2 minutes and 1 shift and his other shift was cut short because he took a penalty. You're like, yeah, sort of fits the profile, if you will.
Oh, yeah. And it depends on the team. This is the final thing I'll touch on with it. It's like, it depends on the team. If you've ever bought a Columbus Blue Jackets jersey, you know that wash tag gets cut out because that's just how the equipment staff does it. So that eliminates one of the things I look for, which makes Columbus a little bit more of a tricky team to figure out than other teams. But that's okay. I don't hold it against any team. Every team has their quirks. But like I said, photo matching's king at the end of the day with the NHL program, because there's a lot of things that can get changed. It's hockey. Guys get injured. Guys get called up. Guys have to get thrown in shirts because they get in fights and get blood all over them. It happens. It's life. And you know what? I live with it. I work with it. And I just find a way to authenticate it.
Bringing you the gift of knowledge this holiday season, it's Filipe Costa, Authentication Associate of MeiGray, NHL Program Director Geoff Spaid of MeiGray as well. Tales from the Warehouse, talking modern hockey jersey authentication. Filipe, along the same lines, do you have a similar mental checklist as Geoff when you're like, all right, time to authenticate, here's where my eyes are?
Yeah, I mean, definitely going on the same route in terms of wash and wear as well. Wear is one of the bigger things when it comes to hockey. When you're looking at other sports, you may not see that as much because of the reality of the sport itself. But looking at that, you're looking at any sort of tagging that may come with the jersey that may indicate, depending on what the team does, whether it's something like, the Rangers have a barcode and the set tag that's sealed into the bottom hem. You'll have the Sabres who had just, a traditional set tag that's sewn in. And some teams, as time goes on, they kind of change what they do with that set. And that information is not really the be all end all, but anything will help you kind of get to the end goal of eventually photo matching that jersey. There was one point where Rangers didn't really have any set tags. They just had a Fanatics hologram or a Steiner Sports hologram and a barcode. So it's like, all right, well, if I only have this to access, I guess, next step is jumping straight to photo matching and figuring that out. And then that's really where the meat and potatoes go. And Geoff gets a bit of a luxury where he knows the start and the end most of the time, while we have to kind of, for a lot of jerseys, try to figure things out. We have to try to figure out, all right, well, this Minnesota Wild jersey or this Vancouver Canucks jersey says set 1. Okay, when does their set 1 start? When does it end? how many sets do they use throughout the season? Because I've seen some Sabres jerseys that they have as much as 3 or 4 sets earlier in the years, but then you have someone like Detroit that, at least some of the ones that I've seen, only have 1 or 2 sets that they use throughout the regular season. So really trying to nail down not just when the players change over their jerseys, but also when the teams decide to do that. And then also when you start getting into the intricacies of, all right, does this guy wear multiple shirts a game? Does this guy like to change pretty often? It's another thing that, for the NHL program, because we have the connection with the team, we know that. We know that Jake Allen wears a jersey per game, 3 jerseys per game, 1 per period. But if it's another goalie from another team, I might not know that. How many jerseys does Thatcher Demko wear with Vancouver? It's likely just 1, but that could also change at the end of it. So we really need to do a little bit more basic research compared to the NHL program. But, once you start getting into it and you have all that information, or as much as you can find it, it just comes down to photo matching, trying to figure out, what shots we're looking at, what games we're looking at. And it's really it. I mean, I think the big difference is just the available information and the amount of more basic research we have to do compared to having a lot of that information already on paper for, our program teams.
Geoff, over to you for a quick one. You mentioned the phrase set tag, and a lot of people have seen them and are well aware of them. But there are also collectors that maybe they're into a team that's never used one. So, for instance, again, the MeiGray tags for the partner teams are there. You can absolutely see them. Washington, a long time ago, right around the turn of the century, had like an elbow print, an elbow stamp, cutting edge, I believe, would do the right, maybe inside the forearm, circular elbow patch. The Devils have they're the people that do their lettering. I'm drawing a blank. But
Philly Express.
Thank you very much. They'll have, but it's not necessarily a set. It's just, this has been done, whatever. Florida has a set tag. They'll say set 1 or something like that. Columbus may offer some set information. It may not be as common as we think. Can you shed a little bit of light on the set tag? Not everybody uses it.
Yeah, I mean, not everyone uses the set tag. And my biggest encouragement, and one of the things we like to remind customers when it comes to set tags, whether a team puts their own set tag in, like Columbus has a special set tag for the year where they'll do like, what's the movie they do all the time? It's, I forget. Casey will put one up right now. I'll rely on him to do that. I'll make him do the extra work. No, but these teams will put them in, but at the end of the day, what we like to remind collectors is that they're not and all be all.
They are not gospel. Exactly.
It is not the gospel.
Yeah.
It's a set tag. So there are plenty of times where we'll get a red set 1, white set 1, gold set 1, whatever color set 1. And collectors will go to the population report, which is the right place to go. And they'll see that, set 1 ended on December 31st. But then a guy might have 2 set 1s.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens there? A guy might have only a set 1 for the whole year, but he played in March. So what is set 1? And then, set 1 is just really how we look at sets. And I like to believe how teams look at sets too, is when was the jersey created? Because if a jersey was created for set 1, but it's worn in set 3, it was still created for set 1 and is a part of set 1. That's how we authenticate in the program. That's how, if you buy a set 1 jersey and it was worn in March, that's why that happens, because we see it as what the jersey was created for. If a guy gets traded to the team and they're in set 2, that's why he starts in set 2. He doesn't get a set 1. And teams, they'll put these set tags in. They'll all have fun designs. Some of them won't. Some of them just use MeiGray tags. And I think there's some teams out there who probably just do nothing. At least there used to be. And so teams all do different things, but the more information we have, the better. And so I'll toss it over to Filipe to talk about how set tags help them upstairs compared to how they help us downstairs.
Yeah, I'd say it's a little bit similar as well. I think talking about the issued part comes to mind. San Jose, their set tags specifically have dates that the jersey's issued. And I believe depending on the year, they might also have a date on when the jersey is pulled. And again, it's a good reference point, and it's a good idea to understand, okay, this is when this was made, and this was when it was, in a way, put into circulation. But, you start looking at some teams may have serial numbers on their set tags. I've seen those serial numbers on teams like Buffalo. The Pittsburgh Penguins have serial numbers on their tags as well. They may not necessarily be something that externally might help us in our authentication, but it seems to be more of an internal system for the teams themselves. I will say one that's helped in times before. There are some teams that will have a barcode in the neck and usually has some sort of number on it. I know the Rangers have done it. Arizona, when the Arizona Coyotes were still around, they were some years that would do the barcode as well. And in situations where you may not have access to a lot of information or provenance on the jersey itself, you can do a little rough research and kind of rough estimation when the item is used by looking at that barcode. You can see the number itself, and like most systems, logically, the higher the number goes, the farther down in the program it goes.
Right.
And we've done that before, where we have a tag that's like, okay, it's this number. Let's see what numbers are around this number, that jerseys that we have seen in the past. And that helps us really kind of narrow down and say, okay, instead of looking at 3 or 4 seasons of jerseys, we're narrowing it down to look at one season or 2 seasons. So set tags are in similarly useful to us, but with the program itself, you have the connect with the team. You have you have the ability to kind of say like, all right, this is what the Devils told us, this is what the Flyers told us, and Geoff can also just, pretty sure Geoff can just reach out to them and say like, hey, can we confirm this information? Which is great. It's helpful. It's great to have that.
It's Tales from the Warehouse. We are talking authentication of the modern hockey jersey. Pleased to be joined by MeiGray's own NHL Program Director, our friend Geoff Spaid, and our other friend, Filipe Costa, Authentication Associate. Filipe, I'll stick it with you for a quick second. So a lot of us have experienced this on the amateur scale. We're trying to photo match certain sweater, not in the game-worn program, and we're looking through Getty. And maybe we stumble upon black and white photos. Maybe we stumble upon color photos, but the lighting is so bad in the arena, and maybe there's an overcorrection and it's entirely too bright, or it's way dark and you're like, I'm never going to be able to match this in my life. Is there any team outside of the program that you're like, oh, I got to deal with one of these again? I'm looking forward to the challenge, but this is like climbing Everest.
Not a team specifically, but I know any of the seasons surrounding the pandemic are a mess to look through. Geoff can attest to this.
Oh yeah, those are horrible.
Because you have, understandably everything that was going on and the way things had to be run and the way the league was running things, which isn't a criticism on them. That's what needed to be done at the time. But the photography is not great. The photography, there's limitations to everything. I mean, I've talked with our NBA program guys. They had the same issue. The photos are not good because the photographers are so limited. But if I have to go to a specific team, I want to say there's been a couple times where we've had Toronto jerseys that I've had issues finding some photos, because the one thing we have is if we don't find photos on Getty, we do also have the access to AP images, the Associated Press. You cannot find any games based in Canada on Associated Press images. So if you're looking at Toronto home games and you don't have any home photos on Getty, you are out of luck entirely if you try to go on AP, which is unfortunate because, it might be, you might be looking at a situation where you have a milestone jersey for a big name player and suddenly that game is just wiped off the face of the earth. But a lot of times too, it comes down to, for me at least, the arena and the photographers that are available. With the different stuff at Staples Center, there's a couple photographers that, I'm not a photographer. I don't understand much about photography, but there are some photos that come from games at Staples Centers that I look at and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm looking. I can't see anything. I can't see anything at all. So there's a lot of times where you kind of have to hunt and peck for what we need and see like, all right, well, I can use these guys, but these guys, I know for my purposes, these photos are not going to help me out at all.
Interesting. Geoff, another picture question, and this is sort of a myth. Photo matches are amazing. Everybody wants one. As the Van Halen song goes, I want one too, or I want some too. Everybody wants some. With all the photography that's available and all of the modern technology, is it still possible that things are unmatched by photographic evidence?
Yes, there are. And it especially gets that way when you get down to let's just say, external equipment, sometimes gloves, socks. But what I've learned in doing this job long enough is that if you dig deep enough, if you get pucks in deep, you just play your game, you get deep in the zone.
There it is.
Eventually you'll find it. That's what I've learned.
Cycle, boys.
Exactly. I have seen stuff where I've gone, yeah, I can't find a match for this pair of gloves. And then all of a sudden someone will send in a message about the pair of gloves and be like, hey, did you guys look at this photo? And it's like, that's a match. Where did you find this? On a random local website of a high school photographer who's putting together a portfolio. There are people who find this stuff.
Right.
It's insane. So yes, I mean, as we get back further into the early 2000s, even the mid 2010s and before, there's definitely a good chance that stuff starts to get missed. The photos aren't available. Photos are in private collections. Photos were just never taken of your random favorite fourth liner at Madison Square Garden. That's just sometimes a reality. But nowadays, it seems more and more often that there is photographic evidence. You just have to go find it. And there have been times, Scott, I'll tell you what, I have delved the internet for photographic evidence from whether it be something like Nova Caps, a Caps fan website, a news website that occasionally they'll have a photo or two that I can't find anywhere else on the internet, but they have it. Or I know for the Nashville Predators, I believe it's the Tennessean is their paper or their website, and they'll have photos from games and training camp, and they're good. I don't see them anywhere else on the internet, but they're out there. And so my encouragement to not only our collectors who are listening to this or people who aspire to photo match more and learn more about the hobby and the space and the practice of photo matching and the skill of it is that, yes, there might be a time where you aren't going to be able to photo match something, and that's okay. But there's always photographic evidence somewhere. You have to dig deep and find it. I've done photos to NHL.com. I've done photos to ESPN Plus game feeds. I've done photos to, I know Filipe can concur with this, old newspaper clippings. We've done photos for that. We've done photos for programs. The old program from the 80s where they'll have just the player headshot.
Yep.
Or one game action shot.
A good black and white photo from the media guide. There are press photos available. There are pictures available. I mean, everybody, you learn little hacks and it's like you score a goal that way once and you want to score a goal again just like that. And you're like, oh, eBay, press photo, autograph, Bob Essenza. And you're like, oh my gosh, look at all these Bob Essenza photos of him with the Jets or the Sabres or the this or the that or Michigan State Club hockey. Or I think that's where he went to school. I don't remember. Anyway, you're like, what am I doing? This is the coolest thing, but you'll keep going back. You'll play that slot machine till it stops paying off. Filipe, before we move on to a new topic real quick, talk to me a little bit about the minor leagues. Are they catching up with as much photographic potential evidence?
Little by little, I think they are, and I think more teams are realizing, to at least have those photos available, whether it's for media opportunities or not. It's actually, as Geoff was talking about, I was thinking on a couple jerseys that I worked on that really helped knowing for the Rochester Americans. They have photos for just about every game from the past, I want to say 6 to 7 years. And we had a couple consignments that were Linus Ullmark jerseys from his time there. And I photo matched one of his jerseys to photos from their database and from their media photos. And I kind of looked around. I looked through every single game that he would have worn that style and all of that. And eventually I found a match. So, but it's really hit or miss. It depends on, what photographers make their photos available. But I do start seeing more and more media out there as it becomes more accessible and easier to just, grab a handful of photos, throw them up on a website, and then you're good to go. And in even newspapers, more minor league teams, depending on what city they're in, get covered a little bit more than others. And, from that same pair of Rochester American Ullmark jerseys, I photo matched, I think it was a newspaper in Rochester had a photo of Ullmark talking about him getting some sort of, Player of the Month award or something. And there's just a great clear shot of him, in the standing position, ready to stop a shot, and clearly see all the puck marks that were on the jersey in front of me. So I think it's a combination of the popularity of said team. If you're talking Hershey, you're talking Chicago, you're talking Rochester, you're getting a ton more photos and media out there just because of the longevity and the history of that team. But you're starting to see other teams. I see more media from Utica, the Devils AHL team, the Utica Comets up north, in seeing a lot more from them and seeing a lot more from maybe newer teams. I think it's the Savannah Ghost Pirates. That's ECHL, but they seem to be more engaged media-wise compared to some other teams. So it really depends who's at the helm. It's a mixed bag, I'll say, but you get some good stuff sometimes.
But it's getting better. It's Tales from the Warehouse, talking about authenticating modern hockey jerseys, a little bit of minor leagues, and certainly the NHL stuff, talking to Geoff Spaid, NHL Program Director of MeiGray, Filipe Costa, Authentication Associate. We talked a little bit about this earlier. When you get a game-worn sweater, the first thing you look for, Geoff, you mentioned wash and wear. You're looking for a tag. You're looking for a born-on date. You're looking in the fight strap. Filipe, along the same lines, you're like, I want to see this. You're looking for whatever clues. Are there, and again, you guys see a lot of fabric. Filipe, I'll start with you. Is there a favorite or a couple of favorite modern pieces that you've authenticated or worked on during your time with MeiGray, where you're like, this one is just going to be unforgettable? And it may be unforgettable because of the amazing wear. It may be unforgettable because it was such a challenge in trying to find the match and doing all the homework, or it may be a combination, like that Linus Ullmark sweater where you're like, hey, I found a picture in the newspaper of him and he's full on striped out, bang. It's amazing. I did the work. I went into the mine and I found a diamond. Talk to me a little bit about the pieces that have stuck out.
It's tough to say sometimes because there is a good amount of stuff that comes in and comes out, and never, we obviously these are customer orders, and there's some stuff we can talk about and some stuff we can't talk about. But we've seen some cool consignments come in and out. There was a Brian Rafalski jersey that came in that it was patched for the finals. I think it was the 07 finals, the ones Detroit beat Penguins in. And looking through it, they had somewhere, and I'm like, it's patched for the finals. Might be a regular season shirt that they prepared for him to use in case he needed it in the finals and needed to back up. And then as I'm looking through it, I'm like, oh, wow. I went through it and matched it to at least one game from every round of the playoffs leading up to the finals. And one, I love Brian Rafalski, big Devils fan.
Yes.
Guy was great. But two, just to be able to kind of, connect it to that run for Detroit. Because it was a great run for Detroit fans and a great run for, anyone who, especially nowadays, watching Detroit hockey, thinks back to. But being able to go from thinking, all right, it's probably a regular season shirt, wasn't really used in much and was just patched after the fact just in case, to saying, oh, wow, this is actually a pretty good piece that connects to a long playoff run and a successful playoff run. I thought that was fun. It was an early one for me too. It was like one of the first consignments that I worked on. So that one stuck out a lot just because of that. And it's my first kind of wow moment coming into the hobby and coming in as well to, this kind of work, to think like, oh, so this is what we're doing. This is the kind of stuff that we're here and we're striving to get out of the work.
And MeiGray's always stood proudly on that mountain with the ability to utilize the resources and present the piece and tell a hell of a backstory with it. Geoff, you and I have talked chapter and verse about pieces that you've done the legwork, extra homework on, and you've authenticated pieces, and then you've gone back and it's turned into an aha moment because you're like, oh, I had no idea he wore this during this. Talk to me a little bit about a piece that stuck out like that. And I know you've mentioned a bunch of these because of your work with the NHL program.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a ton of them. And I could go in depth about guys like Ovechkin, Connor McDavid, Henrik Lundqvist. But the one that sticks out to me, and it's the moment that I knew I fell in love with this kind of work, was John Leonard of the Nashville Predators. Now, you might be sitting there at home going, who's John Leonard? And that's a good point, because John Leonard didn't play a lot with the Nashville Predators. And the moment that was like an aha moment for me is back in 2023, the Nashville Predators on their gold set threes wore the Covenant School patch in honor and in memory of those who lost their lives during the Covenant School shooting. And there's a photo on Getty of Leonard checking someone. I forget which game, of who they're playing, but he's checking a player. And the jersey didn't match the Covenant School patch jersey I had, which made no sense to me. Like the dimples were all off, the stitching was off. It just made no sense. And so I went down this rabbit hole with John Leonard, learning about what happened that game. And what I found was it was an April 1st, 2023. And on the bench, I watched all the game feed, and it goes and they're talking about the Predators winning the patch, how they're honoring the school. And it goes to one player on the bench, John Leonard. And wouldn't you know it, John Leonard's sitting on the bench in the first period with no Covenant School patch on his shoulder. And then all of a sudden, by the end of the first period, he's got a Covenant School patch on.
There it is, right?
And I was like, wait a second, how's that happen? Come to find out, based off of video evidence, photo evidence, and all sorts of evidence, the Predators very quickly realized that, oh, we got to put John Leonard, we got to get that patch on. Someone made the call. Right? Someone saw that feed and said, get Leonard in a patch. So they took a set 1 jersey, slapped the patch on that. They pulled him back into the tunnel for probably 5 seconds, told him, take the jersey off, put this one on. So they pulled him out of his set 3, put him in his set 1 with the patch. He wore that the rest of the game. After the game, they took the patch off the set 1, put it on the set 3, and then he never played in the set 3 again. And on the website, it says this, both jerseys are still available. If there's one jersey that's not Capitals, I kind of want just for like that aha moment of myself, it's both those John Leonard jerseys, because that was the moment, like, I sat there and I worked hard and like, why is this not right? And that's what I mean by like set dates line up. Jerseys seem like they should be worn at specific times, but that's why we do the background work. That's why we do the extra mile, because it would have been easy for me to get the John Leonard set 3 and gone, yep, he wore that this game. Instead, I sat and I went, wait a second, this isn't right. And went back, did the extra research. And that happens with every team. It's not just Nashville specific. There are plenty of teams. And this is where I kind of want to insert a little bit of a warning, and a warning for those at home, to be careful with what you call photo matches, because I've seen a lot of people say, oh, this is a crystal clear photo match. And I've seen people sell jerseys. I've seen people sell equipment. I've seen it on low-end guys. I've seen it on guys like Ovechkin, where someone's selling an Ovechkin item and they're like, this is the piece of equipment he was wearing when he scored this goal. And I have to sit there, and after I've gone through all my research, we've worked with the Capitals in the past, and I say, no, it isn't. I had that piece of equipment in my office last week, and I have a crystal clear photo match with 5 different match points, and the person's selling it with like a zoomed out shot where you can barely tell anything.
Right.
And they're like, that's the helmet.
They're like, oh, look, it's Ovi. You're like, yeah, it's Ovi, but that's not the helmet. Yep, it's Ovi.
It's like there's a white dot right here. It's like, yeah, that's called lighting in Capital One Arena.
It's a reflection.
And I've seen it happen where jerseys for multiple players get the same wear consistencies in one area. And so it's not that you can't photo match on your own. It's that I just encourage you to use a lot more caution when you photo match, because it's, as I've talked about on the podcast before, we're upkeeping history, and I always strive to do a good job. And I know the authentication team with Filipe and the other guys upstairs, they strive to preserve that history and ensure that history. And so if you love game worn, if you love photo matching, that's awesome. I love that for you. I love that you're getting into this space, and it's a great space. It's a fun space. It's an addicting space, but the space you need to be right in. And that's what MeiGray, that's what we strive for. We always want to be right, 100% right. We want, without a shadow of a doubt, to prove that these things are worn. And so as a collector, I encourage you that if you're looking at it and you have 3 games in front of you, and you have a photo match for game 1 and a photo match for game 3, and you have a picture from like 5 miles away for game 2, don't call game 2 a photo match unless you have the proof. Unless you have the proof, unless you can see that burn, unless you can see that repair, unless you can see the way the stitching, the dimples, unless you can see the blood that's still soaked into the jersey, don't call it a match. Be accurate, be correct, because at the end of the day, that's not only going to preserve your reputation in the hobby, that's also going to preserve the item you're selling. And so if you don't know it's a match and you're selling it to someone who sells it to someone who sells it to someone down the line is going to get the short end of the stick and get the short straw out of that situation. And nobody wants that.
Tales from the Warehouse, talking modern hockey jersey authentication with Geoff Spaid, Filipe Costa. Tons of very valuable information in here. If I can throw one more anecdote or one more sort of addendum into that John Leonard story, this is why collectors are like, my set's up. How come I haven't gotten it yet? teams often hold for redundancy, and had the Preds not had that set 1 laying around or the set 3 laying around for the overlap, John Leonard may not have had a wonderful story that we could have shared with you. This is why they're like, yeah, we still keep, they swap from 1 to 2, but they keep 1 for a little while until the 3s show up, and they want to make sure their butts are covered. It's they while they have plenty, or they try to make sure they have plenty, they want to make sure that their butts are covered. So in case somebody has a huge tear that's unrepairable or non-repairable, hey, we can throw them in a set 1, and look, that set 1's going to get some bonus wear. The collectors are going to get contacted. The stories will all be transparent and whatnot. Hey, this happened. You were watching the game when this happened, and something freakish occurred. But this is why teams have the backup set sort of lying around. Filipe, in your authentication adventures, is there a piece that you picked up and you're like, what in the hell did this athlete do in this sweater to get it so trashed? There's got to be a moment like that where you pick it up and you go, this is ridiculous.
Are we talking stuff through the program, or talking stuff that I personally have?
Either or. Because I know that a lot of us, again, the amateur authenticators, off the clock, as it were, like Geoff said, if you do it, good on you. Just make sure you're right. And a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm matching, and there's magnifying glasses, and people have their desk and their home workspace. But even let's talk about inside the friendly confines of MeiGray. Is there something that you picked up and you're like, this is going to be one for the annals?
It wasn't one I worked on, but it was one that we did work on as part of the program, and it was displayed at our expo a couple of years back as part of the Devils, as part of the Devils display for the 03 Cup anniversary. It's Martin Brodeur's one of his Cup Finals jerseys that was just brown. It had like a big brown stain on it. Looked like it was either just couldn't have been blood, obviously, because who sees that much blood on a player unless something,
especially a goal
tragic happens.
God forbid you're Clint Malarchuk. Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And then it's just like, I remember, asking questions about it and everything. Champagne. It was the jersey he was wearing in the locker room when they were celebrating it, covered in champagne, never washed, anything like that, kept that way. Eventually the jersey made it, changed enough hands from that night in the Devils locker room to coming into MeiGray, us authenticating it, and then eventually, customer picking it up and being displayed at our expo. And it's not wear necessarily, but just looking at that jersey, like, you expect to see black marks, you expect to see some red paint transfer from the posts when goalie's hugging the post, but seeing just something brown on the front, you're like, what's going on here?
It's such a cool story, and I remember that piece, and I believe I was at that expo for at least a little while, but I've certainly heard tales from that particular sweater before. Geoff, do you match off the clock, even just sort of personal stuff? I'm a secret off the clock matcher as well. I know it's my full-time job, but I do make donuts. I work in Dunkin' Donuts, but I also make jelly crullers at home. Don't tell anyone.
Oh yeah, I love the stuff. I work all day with jerseys, so jerseys there's a certain point when you hone a skill, it starts to become easy, and you want something more difficult. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll find a piece of equipment in the warehouse that's just been collecting dust, and I'll go, okay, can I match this puck? Or okay, can I match this stick or this practice jersey? Can I find random photos of practice and see if I can find anything in there? And I love doing it. It's a hobby of mine. That's why I ended up working at MeiGray. And I have plenty of pieces where, for example, I worked the 2023 Stadium Series. If you haven't listened to that episode, you could go back and listen to it.
A lot of fun. Yes.
A lot of fun. But the player I bought from that game, I got a jersey from Anthony Mantha, right? And so Mantha, he didn't have the best time with the Caps, but I got to see him fight right in front of me. So that was a positive. And so I have bunch of Mantha stuff all over. I got gloves over there. There's a helmet over there, all from that game. And so I'm like, can I match it all? And so that's what I go through. And I found matches for like the helmet where he's fighting, I think it was Martin. He looks like really angry, and you could see like the whole helmet, and there's like match points all over. The gloves, tougher time, but I have a match to practice day. And so there's always things to find matches for. And I love finding the quirky matches, the matches that nobody expects, and just the ones where it's like, everyone loves gold matches. I love the weird matches, the photos. One of my things I'll pick on with going back to like lighting and whatnot, those weird artistic shots that the league does from like the tunnel with guys running,
Right.
or like it's in like 0.5 aspect ratio and everything's wonky. Those are the photos I love finding matches too, because those to me are hilarious. Just the way people look, the way the aspect ratio is. And it's like, yeah, I know the guy's head's like tiny and his arm's huge, but do you see the burn right there?
Too cool for words. All right, hear me out. Totally off the menu. At the next expo, we have to have a match Olympics where collectors bring in unmatched blind match, and whoever wants to sign up can. And you're going to have some amateur authenticators, and you're going to have some professional authenticators like yourself, and it can just be for fun. I bet you I can match this in X minutes or less. And obviously, if it's, a 1971 piece, where your resources are severely limited, I think we should come up with parameters of get something that a lot of pictures were taken. We'll make it easy, or you could just sort of do it on the the lower end of the skill level and then the higher end. Here, I brought in a blank and black and white era only, no name. You got blurry hockey card. I think that could be a little bit fun and also probably a little bit masochistic. I don't know. Anyway, we're talking modern hockey jersey authentication. Authentication associate Filipe Costa of MeiGray, Geoff Spaid of MeiGray, NHL program director. Filipe, we often pub the email if you want to get on the request list, sales@meigray.com, sales@meigray.com. If you have a piece that you would like to contact the authentication department to get authenticated, to get that stamp, that seal of approval, if it's to be gotten, how do they reach out, sir?
Well, there's a couple different places you can reach out. Of course, to me, my email is fcosta@meigray.com. There's also, obviously, Jim. He's vice president of MeiGray Authenticated. You can reach out to him as well, jmontag@meigray.com. More than willing to answer any questions, any requests, and kind of give you an idea of what we can offer, depending on what you have and, what we're looking at, because can't hurt to ask.
Of course. And it's sort of a what comes next. Can a collector decide to consign said item through authentication?
Oh, absolutely. So we'd go through the process of explaining what the authentication looks like and what we'd be doing there. And at that point, give them not just some details in terms of what a consignment would look like, but as well connect them to sales so that sales can give them a real in-depth rundown. And, say you get to the process where the jersey is authenticated, matched, and ready for consignment, connect you back to sales again. We let you know the results. We'll connect you to, Dave or Drew, and then they run you down with the pricing structure and consignment fee and all of that. So it's a very easy and streamlined process. You just need to, understand what your expectations with authentication are with the end product and what the expectations are with a consignment with the end product. So there are, the road does fork once the authentication work is complete, depending on what you're looking for. But it's pretty straightforward, and we're pretty clear about what we offer and what to expect.
Mr. Spaid, lots of technology, lots of technological advances in a relatively short period of time, whether it be incredibly detailed pixel numbers and lots and lots and lots of detail now available, more sites than ever, people willing to share knowledge. Talk to me a little bit about the future of authenticating sweaters. Obviously, it's going to get easier, but that doesn't necessarily mean your job is going to get easier, because there's still a ton of work to do.
Oh, yeah, there always is. I mean, as long as they don't go the old route of smell-o-vision, I'm okay with it. Because I don't think anyone deserves, whether or not you like that, deserves the smell-o-vision version of authentication. Because I'll tell you what, there are some smelly jerseys that come through. But
yes.
I mean, the league's always making strides to increase technology, whether that's actually the tracker technology they have in the shoulders, or even technology that people don't think of, like concussion helmets or upgrading equipment to make it safer for the game. And so I think as we go on, one of the things that game worn in general will adapt more to and become more entwined with is a deeper and deeper root of authentication and anti-tampering, because there's a lot of people who get, there are bad actors out there. Well, we'll just say it bluntly.
Sure.
Consumers who want to say, oh, this is a Steph Curry jersey that he wore when it wasn't. And sometimes that's ignorance, sometimes it's malice. But I think as we get further down, are the teams going to be doing these things, to whether they're tagging jerseys with RFID tags or finding ways to do tracking chips or whatnot? Maybe. Or maybe it's MeiGray stepping up and saying, okay, this is a gap we see in authentication as it stands today, and we need to fill it. I'm not a big tech guy, so I can only dream so big, but I'm sure there's plenty of ways. I've heard of all sorts of technologies where you could scan a part of the jersey, just the fabric, and it'd be like, yeah, this is Ovechkin's white set 1C from 23-24, and he scored 3 goals in it. I've heard of that technology. I know it exists somewhere out there. Whether or not it's ready for development and ready to implement is a different story, but there's always technology that I think could be relevant in the game-worn space and other hobbies as a whole within 5, 10, 15 years.
Filipe, are you a tech guy? Whether it's tracking chips and I'm trying to envision how the AI world can come to help you guys in authenticating. I'm all ears.
Yeah, I would be interested in seeing how that would play out, but off the top of my head, AI specifically, I have no clue. But with tracking, I know I've worked on some soccer jerseys within the last few years where they already have built-in RFID chips where you get a tag, you scan it, and then it tells you the information of that. Or eBay, for example, whenever they authenticate sneakers, they have a little tag they clip onto the laces that you can put a specific app to it, and it gives you the information and it directs you to some sort of database or something like that. So it's certainly feasible. And we've seen teams do it in the past. I think it was the Penguins that for many years used to have like a stat track sheet that would, even something as basic as, one equipment manager, tracks when the jersey was pulled into the locker room, another one was pulled out. We've seen teams that had built-in trackers that would scan when, the locker room, you set up like a scanner in the locker room. When the jersey comes in, records that. When the jersey goes out, it records that. So the technology is there. It just comes down to who wants to implement it and, the willingness to do so. And I mean, if it helps our job be easier and be more secure and, even more rock solid, I'm all for it. It just depends on, what the plan there is.
Filipe, we'll stick with you, and then we'll go to Geoff, and then we'll close it out. Final tips, and this is going to be a sort of a fun one to answer, because if we were doing the Venn diagram thing, it's like, look, a red flag may disqualify a sweater, but a green flag, which is a good item, let's say, or a good thing on the checklist, doesn't necessarily mean it's good. It just adds to build the case. Just like a red flag could. Oh, red flag, I don't like that. I don't like that. But it doesn't mean the sweater's bad. So any sort of final tips? Obviously, I think the overriding one is tread wisely.
Yeah. I mean, everyone in the hobby says it, do your homework. But yeah, I think you have to take everything about the jersey into account. You have to take into account, the provenance, the chain of custody, any sort of history that may come across that team or that jersey. I mean, we all know about all the custom crafted jerseys from the 90s, especially with the Devils. We all know those stories, but there are other stories that, some hobbyists might not be as familiar with, where, there are some jerseys that are a little sketchy floating out there. So I think a big one is really communicate with people. If you're looking at something, see if there's anyone that might, have a little bit more information for you, be able to help you out. But in general, just know what you're looking at. Don't dive into something head first thinking that, yeah, I'll figure it out on the way there. Really make intelligent and educated decisions and take into the whole picture. Because like you said, just because you find a good thing on a jersey doesn't disqualify it from being bad, because there could be other things. And you start kind of adding things up to a point where maybe you can't even figure out if it's a good or bad jersey, and the jersey is just a question mark, and you're like, I don't even want to touch that. So, really be prudent, I think, is the best part of it. Because
build
spending money.
Use your clues, build your case, use your context. Geoff Spaid, we'll close with you, sir. Final tips?
Yeah, I mean, my final tip is approach everything from a place that says, this isn't real, and let me prove it is. If you approach it from, and I see this all the time, is if you approach it from, this is obviously game worn and this is the real deal, then your mind's already going to want to say, this is real. And you're going to look for every excuse in the book to say, that's real. The way I encourage any hobbyist, any professional to approach things is approach it from, this comes in the door with no provenance, no letter, no nothing. This is, for best case scenario, it's game worn. For worst case scenario, someone accidentally dropped a retail jersey and drug it on the ground, and your job is to figure out what it is. And as Filipe said, there are times where if you approach it from that angle of like, this isn't real, even like me, I have the set dates, I have all this information. Every jersey I pick up, I basically say to myself, okay, this starts at 0 and let's see how far up the scale it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I hadn't done that with some jerseys, I wouldn't have found some bad jerseys. We would have put out some bad jerseys, some jerseys that shouldn't be out there if I approached every jersey as this is the real deal. Because there were jerseys that have come in before that I've looked at and they would make sense to approve. It makes sense to say they're game worn. But when you approach it from the angle of this, everything that comes in is not good until we can prove it's good. That's how you catch flaws. That's how you catch things. And that's how you find more good out of items. Fun fact. And then you'll also weed out the bad stuff. And as Filipe said, if an item's a question mark at the end of the day, that's okay. Because I'll tell you what, marking something as questionable and then making while it might hurt, the decision to put it out, if you put it out there saying that like, this is questionable, this is definitely questionable, or never putting it out there and just letting that disappear and fade into time and just never resurface. Well, it might hurt your wallet if you spend a couple $100 on something that comes out to be questionable or bad. The way I look at it is you're serving the greater good of the hobby, that you took one bad item out of circulation and you took one step to improve the hobby we all enjoy. And yeah, I can't give you back the multiple Benjamin Franklins you spent on it, but I can at least give you the respect and admiration you deserve of doing the right thing to upkeep the history, to make sure this hobby thrives and that we keep bad actors, whether they are acting today or they acted 50, 100 years ago, whatever. Preserve the hobby, protect the hobby, and approach everything that it's not real until you prove it is.
Gentlemen, this has been an absolute pleasure. Again, if you have an item that you desire to be authenticated, take it to MeiGray. F. Costa at MeiGray.com. J. Montague. It's spelled like Montague, but it's pronounced Montague. Jmontague. Jim will take care of you. Filipe will take care of you. There you go. G. Spaid, Spaid at MeiGray.com. Boys, thanks for talking modern hockey jersey authentication. Authentication associate Filipe Costa. Geoff Spaid, NHL program director. For them, I'm Scott. Have a great holiday season. Until next time, the warehouse is closed.